Hello, I'm Beck. Welcome to my channel. Today I'll be doing a book review on The Finding by Angelica Grymm. If you love romance-based sci-fi novels, then this is definitely one you should check out. It's by an independent author, so you probably haven't heard of it. And yeah, let's get started. So Reese is an Australian woman who gets abducted by evil aliens and sold as a pleasure slave on the other side of the galaxy. She's naturally very afraid, but she's the kind who, in fight or flight or fawn, she fights. So she's being very difficult on this slaver ship, and they're motivated to sell her as quickly as possible. Enter Kaylin, who is our male love interest. He is shopping for a gift for his admiral. I forget the reason why he was going to buy this admiral a gift. I don't know if he just got promoted or they just had like a really successful mission, but he basically steps in where these slavers are. It looks as though they're about to shoot Reese or something, like injure her, and so he kind of buys her as a way of like getting her away from them, but also he's buying a slave, and not just for himself but as a gift for somebody else. So it starts off in a very problematic place, but as most stories go, you don't want things to be perfect, and if every character is perfect, then that's boring. So while there are like very problematic themes in this sort of story as a whole, like the story is not problematic, the situation is problematic, which is a very important distinction. What I liked most about this book, spoilers ahoy, because I'm not going to go through exactly what happened in the whole story, but I'm going to go into detail when I'm talking about the things I liked and the things I didn't like. So starting with the things I liked, I really liked how there was like a sort of very light tone throughout the whole story. So like the characters had a good sense of humor, even when they were in like a hard situation, they were trying to cheer each other up and like bolster confidence and things like that, where like I have read books or seen movies or, you know, those sort of things where like Dune is a great example. They're in a bad situation, but it's still not believable that nobody cracks a smile or a joke or like laughs over just like how shitty things are. Like it's just not relatable of like living in a society where everyone is just serious all the time. That's boring because it's not relatable and it's not really real. So like, yes, you have characters who are upset and serious and sad, but they're not like that all the time. And for the most part, people's interactions are like changing their emotions as they go. So if you interact with someone who's being cruel, then obviously you come out of that situation being upset. You might go directly to someone who you care about and who cares about you, and they will try to cheer you up, usually using humor or like kindness or something that makes you feel the nice feels. So this author is very good at that, especially using such dark themes as abductions and slavery and like legally allowed pleasure services. So like Reese is in a situation where technically she, being a pleasure slave, is not allowed to refuse providing those services, if you know what I mean. So it could have very easily been the kind of book that I just do not enjoy because it almost heralds an abusive relationship. This was not one of those books. So I really liked that, like, while it could have gone dark, it did not go dark. Yeah. I also really liked Angelica Grymm's ability to just tell the story really concisely, but without leaving out information that lets me imagine everything that's going on. So like at no point was I confused about what the scenery was like or like where they were or who was talking to each character. I really felt like I was there in the story, which is surprisingly hard for a lot of like traditionally published authors to do, I'm currently reading a book, I'll do a review of that later, where it is a traditionally published book and I just don't know what the hell is going on half the time. This book, not like that. It's very, very well written, great immersion, and told concisely. So this isn't the kind of author who like will describe a river will describe a river in like 6 pages of poetry. Like if it was a beautiful river, she'll probably do a paragraph talking about how like the light was bouncing off the waves and it sparkled and made the character feel this way and that way, but that's it. And I love that because I do not have a long enough attention span to read 6 pages before they even dive into the water. Like, they're at the river was beautiful, they dove into the water. Like, it shouldn't be that hard, but it is apparently, and I really liked that kind of writing style. Another thing that I really, really appreciated was the cast of characters. Each of them had a very distinct vibe, and because of that, if some of the, like, you know when you have dialogue and someone starts talking before it actually says who's talking, before I got to the part that said who was talking, I already knew who was talking, and that's how you know that you have really well-written characters. Just the way that they say things indicates their like personality and their like mental capacity and like what they're just generally like. And while I couldn't personally relate to all of the characters, the mother is just intolerable. She is like such a control freak. It makes you angry. The fact that you could have a character in there that like makes you so angry, it's very well written. I really, really liked that. So, fantastic. Yes. One thing that I actually did love though is with the universal translator. So I mentioned that like when she was taken and being kept as a slave on the evil aliens ship, they didn't give her a translator, and you later find out that just that alone was illegal, because like all beings are supposed to be given a universal translator, especially slaves, because like their job is to serve, and if they can't understand what's being said, then they obviously can't be compliant. And she gets this universal translator, and there's a couple of little jokes about like it doesn't perfectly translate what she's trying to say into what they hear, so things come off as like a little bit more seductive than she meant. I forget the examples. You can read the book and you'll find them. But basically the translators don't work perfectly. And yeah, as Reese decides that like she's going to accept her life and she wants to be with Kaylin, and she wanted to like surprise him with something, and because she doesn't really have money to like buy him gifts, like he gives her money to buy whatever she wants, but she doesn't want to use his money to buy him a gift because it's kind of weird. So essentially she buys herself like tapes and things so that she can teach herself his language, which is something that I have just never seen in any sci-fi or fantasy where different languages are involved. It's either that the characters already know these languages, or there is a spell or a piece of technology that allows universal knowledge of the language, so no one has to put effort in to learning a language, to being better understood, and to better communicate with someone that they care about. So I thought that was just like a really powerful action to demonstrate that Reese, she wasn't just like complying because she had to be there. She actively wanted to be a part of Kaylin's life. So that was like a really, really cool part of the story that I enjoyed. The pacing and structure was really, really good. The chapters are quite short, which I enjoy, because if I don't have a lot of time to read, I still have that sense of accomplishment of like, oh yeah, I read 3 chapters, even though it's like 5 pages or maybe like 9 pages or something like that. So it was pretty quickly paced, and like that really worked for the story as well. I also liked that in terms of structure, you get a dual point of view. So most of it is from Reese's point of view, but you get the occasional chapter. It's more common in the beginning of the book than towards the end, but it sort of goes like Reese's point of view and then Kaylin's point of view. And I've read a few books where this is done in a really bad and frustrating way, where every time it changes between characters, something completely different is happening. So you are basically like, you have one story that's happening with this character and another story that's happening with this character, and you just have to trust that eventually those stories will become relevant to one another. But in the meantime, you have to remember everything that's happening, like as it jumps back and forth. And it really ruins the flow for me. Like, I can't really stay immersed if I know I'm about to get pulled out and thrown across to somebody else's life in a seemingly unconnected way. But in this one, it was done really, really well, because say it would go from like Reese is getting beaten by one of the guards on this slave ship, and then it cuts to Kaylin, who's like, oh, I see someone being injured, like I don't know what's going on there, but that's not okay. I'm going to step in and do something. So like, it's the same story continued from a different point of view. And so you never lose your sense of immersion. You're just seeing it from somebody else's perspective. So that was done really super well. The themes were another thing that were done very well. I've already sort of talked about this, but like, even though it was based around this idea that like Reese is a slave, she doesn't legally have the right to give consent about what she's doing. She's essentially in this world, like slaves are kind of more like pets. So like if she steps out of line, everyone's looking at Kaylin as her like master to be like, control your slave. And but on the other side of that, if she's like malnourished, if she looks poorly treated, if it's clear that Kaylin is not looking after his slave, that is considered extremely shameful as well. So when people look to be like, oh, control your slave, they don't mean like beat your slave into submission, because that would be something that's socially unacceptable. Which kind of takes me into things I didn't like about this book. I didn't really understand, and this, I should reiterate, this is the first of a series. And so in the Mendovan Alliance Chronicles, they're probably going to elaborate more on this like legal slavery situation, because there are a few people on the ship with Reese who were also abducted from Earth. And in this story, they kind of don't seem to care about those people at all. At most, they achieve like within the legal system, it gets acknowledged that these like Rathians, who are the bad aliens, it gets acknowledged that Reese was taken from a free planet and she was among other people from this planet who have been taken. So like, it's acknowledged that people are being taken from free planets and illegally being sold as slaves. I don't think they really get into like finding the other slaves and trying to figure out what's happened to them. They shut down the operation as far as they can. It's kind of that situation of like, if someone is selling illegal drugs, you can arrest the person who's directly selling those drugs, but you would need to find out who's actually like at the top of this organization, hiring that person to sell the drugs and telling them where to get the drugs and where to go with them. So it's like a little bit more complicated than just like shutting it down and then it's done. But so I didn't really like that it didn't elaborate on like what happens to a slave who refuses to perform their duty. Like what happens if like you're a born slave, which is legal in this universe, and you straight up don't want to be a slave and you try to escape, or you try to like, you just refuse to perform whatever services you were supposed to be doing as a slave. The general vibe of most of the population, like Kaylin's sister is a little bit of a like, I said human rights activist, slaves rights activist, who she doesn't like the idea of slaves. And I feel like there should have been more characters who were on that platform, especially ones who like were very kind to Reese, and sort of you could tell that they wanted to help Reese's situation. but they never made a comment like, yeah, it's crazy that we have slaves in this society. It's crazy that like somewhere so civilized would be treating a fraction of its people so poorly. It's just sort of accepted, like in Harry Potter, where you have the house elves and all of the wizards are like, oh, they just like it. They like serving us for nothing. Like they like to be our slaves. They enjoy it. It seems to have that kind of vibe. And we never meet someone who was born into slavery. So Reese doesn't really meet any other slaves when she's on this planet. So you don't get the answers to those kind of questions like, are the other slaves happy? Do they prefer it to having to work for a living and get paid because they are like very well kept, like a pet? Or like, are there a bunch of slaves who are like, no, I hate this because I don't have any freedom at all? Or have they also been brainwashed into just thinking that like, yes, we're downstairs people, that is our lot in life, and we should never try to be anything other than that? But yeah, my main thing is like, if you need to treat your slave really well, but they rebel and they try to escape, like what is the punishment there? What happens? That might be answered in a future book. So it being a reason I didn't like this book isn't really a huge thing. Another thing that I didn't like so much about this book, which is kind of like such a small detail, but it bothered me, so I need to talk about it. At the beginning, when Reese is sold to Kaylin and then she's brought onto his ship, she's like very aggressive with those aliens who are about to like kill her, and basically like trying to beat them up and get away from them, even though she's on a ship. But where are you going to run? And then Kaylin gets her and takes her onto his ship, and then they like depart, and she kind of just like accepts that she's a slave now. Like she's like tells Kaylin, like she gets a translator so she can actually communicate with him now, but she's like, yeah, I was stolen. I'm not a slave. I should be free. And then he was like, oh, well, legally you're a slave until we can sort this out. And she kind of just is like, okay, I guess. And it really stands out when she first meets the Admiral, who is officially her like owner. Instead of being like, I'm not a goddamn slave, I will not be performing services for you, like you need to back up. And I'm just like, you can all F off. I'm not a slave. Fuck this situation. Pardon my language. She's just like, oh, I give up. The first time she meets her owner, if her owner had been like, yeah, you're going to perform sexual services for me now because I own you, I don't really know how that scene would have played out, because Reese was just like, whatever. It seemed weird. It seemed weird that she just kind of accepted it. But in the defense of the author, it did also go into the fact that she was severely malnourished at this point. She literally passed out and had to be in the like medical bay for, I think it was like a week or something, before she got to her quarters and meet her owner. So you could justify it by being like, she did have a lot of fight in her and then she lost it. And then it did talk about how she has realized, like, she's looking out this window at infinite space being like, I can't escape. I can't just go home. Like, even if I figured out how their ship worked, I don't know where in the galaxy I am. I don't know how to navigate my way home. So she's kind of given up, but it is still weird that, like, I guess if it was me, even if I wasn't physically fighting, every single being that I met, I would reiterate that, like, I was born free. I am not a slave. I am not going to be performing any services for you. Do with that what you will. Like, if you're gonna kill me. I'm not gonna be your slave. That's where I would be. But, like, I guess for the progression of the plot, she needed to be a little bit less argumentative, because a lot of the people on this ship did want to help her, which she didn't know yet, but like they were kind to her and she was kind to them. But like, I feel like they needed to be really, really kind to her first so that she could then lower her guard, rather than her lowering her guard and being pleasantly surprised that these people weren't horrible. some of the unique elements that I really enjoyed was, as I mentioned in the things I liked, Reese learning a new language rather than just relying on her translator. Very, like, I've never read that in another book. I've never seen it in another movie. So I think it's like, I say it like this is a movie. This isn't a movie yet. But I thought that was really good. There were parts where like Reese is away long enough that she experiences a menstrual cycle. And I've read maybe one or two other books where the leading lady is an adult woman and therefore has a period. Usually it's not discussed. And on one hand, I think that can be fine because it's not like you mentioned whenever someone goes to the toilet or anything like that. Like, normal body regulation doesn't always need to be described, but when you've been like taken to an unfamiliar place, so you don't, like, she didn't pack a bag, she doesn't have pads and stuff with her, so she sort of had to address that. And being different species, it sort of sparked a conversation that went into like how reproduction works in like between each of the species and like if they're even compatible in that way. And it was also very interesting that when she is on Kaylin's planet, the sort of pheromones and things affect her. And like, I don't know if it's the planet or just being among these people, but like, it's not just like, oh yeah, she's very angry because she's having like PMS. It's sort of like, she also gets like unusually aroused around this male. I usually get the ick when things are like males and females in like romance stories, but when it is talking about different species, I think you can get away with it because it's sort of a scientific terminology rather than like men and women. I prefer to just say like, if he is a masculine species of his kind, I think you can get away with calling him a man. Definitely you can call him a guy if you're like from the perspective of Reese, who's an Australian human person. She thinks of males as guys, but like, I've gone off on a weird tangent. Anyway, the scientific observations of males and females in close proximity does have like an effect on her in addition to having an effect on him, but she wasn't really prepared for it because she doesn't know like how this species works. So for example, she thinks that like she keeps smelling this really nice smell where she's like, I don't know where it's coming from, but it just really smells amazing. And then Kaylin's sister is like, you're smelling him because you're attracted to him and like he's attracted to you, and that's creating a chemical thing that's happening. And she's like, oh, well then, good to know. Cool. I won't get more into that, but this is a romance, so like you can guess. Another thing, and I'll admit I haven't read that many sci-fi books, but just from like the stories I have consumed in various ways, which are primarily TV shows and movies, and fantasy stories that have similar vibes of like you're away from home or like you're taken or something, like fairies taking someone into the fairy realm. Not a lot of them result in that person at the end of the story deciding to go home. And this is a big spoiler, but at the end of this book, Reese is freed and given the option to stay on the planet with Kaylin or go home to her family. Like her dad doesn't know what's happened to her, and she's been gone for like a few months now. So she basically decides like, I'm going to go home. I think part of it is there is a miscommunication where she thinks that Kaylin doesn't want to like be with her. So she's a little bit heartbroken. And it has been a minute since I've read this book, so I don't want to describe what happens in the ending and then be wrong about it. Although you should read the ending, and if I am wrong about it, you can tell me about it in the comments. But basically she goes home, her dad finds out she's not dead, and she basically thinks that like that's going to be her life now. But Kaylin comes after her and basically meets her dad, and like instead of him just being like, okay, well, I just want you, so can you come with me back to my planet and we'll never see any of this again? He's sort of like, well, hi, I'm Kaylin, I'm sure you've heard about me. And the dad ends up telling everyone that he's going on like a holiday and coming with Reese and Kaylin back to like see this world that because Reese wants to go back to this world, but she's made a lot of friends there. She's a mechanic. Like, her passion is like machines and things, and so she's actually been learning about like the spaceships and stuff, where she's so excited about working with spaceships, because obviously on Earth that's not really a thing that a lot of people can do, especially not if you're from a farming town and you didn't go to like special universities and stuff. Anyway, if Kaylin was not involved, she probably would have wanted to stay on the planet just for the spaceship. So I feel like she essentially left because she felt like A, she wasn't really wanted, and B, she didn't want to be around Kaylin anymore because like she was heartbroken. Anyway, yeah, she gets her dad and they go back to this planet so he can see the life that she's been living and see that like things are actually pretty good. If she decides to go and stay there, that's fine. They're not going to be completely separated from each other for the rest of time. It doesn't become a case of like, you can either live on Earth or you can live here. And yeah, normally you don't see that. Normally it's just like, oh, well, my whole family thinks I'm dead, so I guess I'll just stay dead and just live with this guy and that'll be great. Overall, I really enjoyed this story, and I look forward to reading the rest of the series to find out if it answers my questions about like what happened to the other slaves, and is slavery going to be abolished eventually? I haven't read a lot of sci-fi books, but this one sort of gave me Star Trek meets Vampire Diaries vibes, and I really enjoyed that. So if you're into both of those things, I recommend you try this book as well. I gave this book 4 stars because I did really enjoy it, but I would have liked to see, as I mentioned, more fight from Reese when she initially came on the ship. I felt like it was kind of out of character for her to give up so quickly. And then, as I've already touched on, I would have liked to see more of the like good characters be like against slavery more vocally. But like, that's just a couple of little things, so that was just the 1 star that I took off. But overall, I really enjoyed the finding, and if this video piqued any interest at all, I really recommend you support independent authors. Go and check it out, the links are below. If you've read this book, please let me know what you thought of it. Did I leave anything out that you want to talk about? Drop me a comment below. If you'd like to recommend a book for me to read, please comment that below. I'm always on the lookout for a new series, a new story, especially by independent authors, because most of my to be read pile is inspired by Pinterest and Goodreads, where independent authors don't usually get featured. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.